what does have to do with my talk is the idea, as Catherine said, that we are always in a story, that who we are as human beings and who we are as a nation and who we are as individuals is always grounded on a story. Lately, I've been having lots of interesting conversations with a woman who Skyped me from Mallorca, a woman I've never met named Elizabeth Sartoris, who's a microbiologist. And she said, one thing could make a huge difference in the world, I think. I said, what's that, Elizabeth? She said, if we changed the story of science from a mechanical story to one of a living being. I said, yes, that would make a difference, but why do you suppose we have a mechanical story to begin with? And then I thought, before she answered, of course, the scientific myth, and by myth I don't mean something untrue, was begun in the 18th century, in the Enlightenment. And what was God then? A clockmaker who set this marvelous thing into motion, like a machine that's been running ever since. And that metaphor, unconsciously, has formed the basis for our big story in which we think of the world as comprised of individual mechanical parts. And even the cells in our bodies we think of as mechanical parts. So one of the big stories that needs to change, I think, is the story of the grounding on which science is based. Not the scientific method, nothing that science does, but the understanding on which it's based, especially for the general public. People I know who are people who know that I work with scenarios of the future often come up to me and say, all right, you work with the future, tell me what the future is going to be. And all I can tell them is, we don't know what the future is going to be. We know certain things that are likely to happen. We don't know how they go together to create the future. We have no idea. But we do know that the future is a story. It only exists as a story because we only have the present. The past is a story, the future is a story. The story we tell about the future shapes the present. If I said that I knew for a certainty that there would be an earthquake in 5 minutes, versus I know for a certainty that a very wealthy man is coming in and giving everyone a trip to Hawaii, if you just sat here under the earthquake scenario and then sat here under the Hawaii scenario, you would have a very different sense of what the present moment was about. Your present is shaped by the story you're telling about the future. Once when I was consulting with NASA, I was in a group of people gathered together to talk about what we should put on the moon. This was back in the days when we thought we were going to do another moon landing. Needless to say, I was the only poet there. The engineer who began the meeting looked straight at me and said, creativity is for people who didn't have good ideas in the first place. But then he looked at everyone else in the room, mostly engineers, and he said, logic is an organized way to go wrong with confidence. And telling the story about the future is telling a story that's somewhere between not having good ideas in the first place and going wrong with confidence. There's a humility, as the Navy SEAL might say. There's a humility about any story that we would tell or could tell about the future. What happens when there isn't humility, or maybe there was in these cases I'm about to share with you, but if you wanted to know, say, what the future of the telephone would be in the 1890s, wouldn't you go to the number one outfit in communication, Western Union? This is a Western Union internal memo. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. Or, if you were reading Popular Mechanics in 1949, their thought about the future, computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. Imagine that. Or, the chairman of IBM. I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. I think I have more than 5 computers. I didn't. Or the founder and chairman of Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977, within living memory, there is no reason anyone would want a computer in their home. Or, this you've heard, the professor of economics at Yale University in 1929, stocks have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. Or, if you wanted to know about the future of computers in the 1980s, you would go to Bill Gates, who said, 640K ought to be enough for anybody. All of you are familiar with Lord Kelvin, the president of the Royal Society, who said heavier than air flying machines are impossible in 1895. Or the Yale University professor's comments on Fred Smith's thesis. Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx, he had his idea in graduate school. He wrote a paper on it. He got a C on that paper, which for graduate school is flunking, really. So what the professor said is, the concept is interesting and well-formed, but in order to earn better than a C, the idea must be feasible. My favorite, the commissioner of the U.S. Office of Patents in 1899, right before the turn of the century, recommended to Congress that the patent office should be closed because, he said, everything that can be invented has been invented. And finally, Harry Warner of Warner Brothers, 1927, who the hell wants to hear actors talk? That has a double edge to it.